Is this who the Red Sox have been waiting on? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbin, and after the Red Sox traded for Crochet, they've gone pretty radio silent this offseason. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the latest speculation as to who the Red Sox next big target may be. We're going to talk about whether or not they have a real chance of getting him, and of course, what this means overall for the Red Sox offseason. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Okay, so I think it's pretty obvious here when we title this video Japanese Star that the topic of this video is going to be Roki Sasaki. Now, we've actually already talked about Roki Sasaki this offseason, where we did a real in-depth analysis as to what his statistics could look like with the Red Sox, so we're not going to do that in today's video. Instead, we're going to be focusing mainly on the latest news connecting the Red Sox to Sasaki because we do have some new information. Jonathan Mayo of MLB.com put out an article yesterday that really detailed where everything kind of stands in the Roki Sasaki sweepstakes, and believe it or not, the Red Sox were mentioned here, and they were mentioned in kind of a big way because in this article, Jonathan says, quote, "In the AL, the Red Sox are very serious about making a pitch to the Sasaki team. The main selling point might be the history of Japanese players having success, in which he lists a few of them, and positive experiences playing in Boston, and that they have an impressive pitching development program, also talking about how Craig himself can speak to that in depth." Now, I think everyone has two immediate questions after seeing this article. At least I know I had two immediate questions. The first one being, do the Red Sox have a legitimate shot in this thing? And honestly, I think that's a really tricky question to answer because I don't think anyone truly knows. I still think overwhelmingly the odds are that Roki Sasaki ends up in either Los Angeles with the Dodgers or San Diego with the Padres, and most MLB executives agree. He did a poll as to where he thinks Roki Sasaki is going to end up. 11 people said the Dodgers, 7 people said the Padres. That was the most of any team, and it feels like he's destined to go to the West Coast. However, I do think there is a small possibility here that Roki Sasaki's open to all teams in Major League Baseball, or at least a select few teams in Major League Baseball that don't simply just include the West Coast. And if that's the case, I gotta be honest with you here, while I still don't think the odds of him doing this are big, and it's a massive if to talk about, but if he is ready available for teams on the East Coast, I don't think the Red Sox have too bad of a pitch here. I don't know if I'm talking myself into this because I'm a Red Sox fan, but you look at it and you say, okay, how could the Red Sox set themselves apart? Well, I think the first thing is that he's right about the Japanese heritage. The Red Sox have had 4 Japanese players win World Series rings here. They've had a lot of success, especially with Japanese pitchers. I know some people would consider Daisuke not a success with the money that was paid to him, but he still had some pretty solid seasons here in Boston. There have been other examples, right? Koji Uehara is still a massive part of Red Sox Nation coming back and doing things. I think that's absolutely a selling point for Roki Sasaki, but on top of that, you take a look at it, and we know that Roki Sasaki is pretty heavy on pitching development and really wants to go to a team that he thinks is going to help him truly develop into a good Major League pitcher. Well, I gotta tell you, the Red Sox have a pretty good pitch with that too, right? They have a fully pitching-focused front office right now, and at the helm of it is a former Major League pitcher. You take a look at who's on that bench for these guys in games, and it's Andrew Bailey, who's one of the more revered pitching coaches in Major League Baseball. They've made changes to their pitching structure throughout its organization. They've got Kyle Bodie, who is the founder of Driveline, which is a pretty famous place pitchers go to improve themselves, in the fold here for at least a little bit. And on top of that, they have the results to prove that, hey, what we are doing here is working, and it's working well, especially when it comes to starting pitchers. The bullpen, kind of a different story, right? But in terms of the rotation, the Red Sox went from the 22nd best ERA in baseball in 2023 to the 7th best ERA in baseball in 2024. That is legitimate progress towards a very good rotation. You add in Garrett Crochet to this mix, and there's a lot of positives coming into 2025 for the Red Sox and their pitching. Not to mention, if you want to look at development, the Red Sox traded away Kyle Teal and Braden Montgomery and Chase Meidroth, who are all top 10 players in the Red Sox farm system. So to adjust, all of a sudden, the Red Sox have 4 legitimate starting pitching prospects in their top 10. That's the first time we've seen that in a very long time. There were legitimate results. There were legitimate things that Craig Breslow can speak on when it comes to how they could benefit Roki Sasaki from the pitching development side of things. Not to mention, the Red Sox have been pretty in on Roki Sasaki for a while. Craig Breslow himself flew to Japan to scout Roki Sasaki personally, and I think that does mean something when it comes to whether or not or how invested the Red Sox are in this move. So you take a look at everything, and again, I think overwhelmingly you sit there and you say it's more than likely that Roki Sasaki is not coming to the East Coast. There are a lot of really intriguing suitors on the West Coast. It's closer to home for him. It's more marketable because of the time zone difference and whatnot. The Dodgers already have a massive history with really treating Japanese players well. They have a fantastic pitching system over there. The San Diego Padres have Yu Darvish. The Seattle Mariners, which not enough people are talking about, are one of the best pitching factories in the entire sport right now. They could have a really legitimate pitch for Roki Sasaki. So I still think overwhelmingly he's going to go to the West Coast, but if he doesn't, I don't know, guys. I honestly think the Red Sox have a decent shot at this, and that's a massive if to ask about. But if it is possible, I can understand why the Red Sox are really, really heavily invested in why they're trying to get Roki Sasaki. So that's the first question I asked myself. Is this even possible? And I think the answer is yes. I just don't know to which degree. I think it's a very small percentage chance that he still comes here. The other question I asked myself about this Roki Sasaki news is whether or not this is why the Red Sox have kind of totally halted any sort of movement on the open market. Now, originally, my true thought process here was Roki will kind of be a cherry on top of whatever team gets him. Because he is maxed in what you can pay him, which for the Red Sox, by the way, is $6.261 million, he ends up sort of being a supplemental piece. Any team who's truly invested in wanting to be a competitive team in 2025 can go out and they can get whoever they want on the free agent market because this is sort of separate allocated money, right? One doesn't really affect the other. My thoughts on that have changed a little bit because I've thought about this quite a bit. If the Red Sox are sitting there trying to decide if they want to give big money to a guy like Corbin Burnes, I think especially if they think they have a legitimate shot at Roki Sasaki, that's absolutely going to impact this. If you're the Red Sox, who are already pretty hesitant about giving big money to aging starting pitchers, the clear and obvious, more desirable choice would be Roki Sasaki, right? If you can sign him for, let's say, $6.2 million going into 2025, I think that's much, much more desirable than giving Corbin Burnes $37 million a year or whatever it is for the next 6 or 7 years. And I think that could be a possibility that the Red Sox are sitting there, they're saying, hey, wait a second, we're going to wait and see if we want to truly invest in Burnes to figure out where this Roki Sasaki sweepstakes ends up. Or on the other hand, let's talk about a bat. The Red Sox probably have a certain amount of money that they're allowed to allocate based on what the owners want to do this offseason. If they get a Roki Sasaki for cheap and they think that this guy can be a part of the front line of this rotation, well, now you can utilize some of that money that you were going to allocate towards pitching and put it towards a bat. So while I've been pretty firm on, hey, I think Sasaki is a separate market than the free agent market, I could absolutely see why this may be holding some people up. A bigger question is, do I like that? Do I like the idea of the Red Sox sort of holding out on any real big moves here until the Sasaki sweepstake finishes? I honestly don't. I got to be honest with you. I think it's a really, really big risk the Red Sox are taking if this is what they're doing. There's no confirmation that this is how the Red Sox are playing this offseason. And honestly, I really hope it isn't because it's a big risk to take. Sitting there and just gambling essentially that Corbin Burnes is going to be patient enough for some of these teams, which, by the way, the teams that are invested in Corbin Burnes are probably also going to be pretty heavily invested in Roki Sasaki. You have to imagine the Blue Jays are going to try for him. You have to imagine the Giants being on the West Coast and having some pretty successful pitchers despite losing Andrew Bailey are absolutely going to be in on him, right? Those could be all three of these teams, the big players in the Corbin Burnes sweepstakes, could be sitting there saying, we're going to wait on Sasaki. But at the same time, too, if the Red Sox do it, who's to say that the Blue Jays or the Giants don't say, well, wait a second, you know what? We want the sure thing. We want to make sure we make this move and give him an offer he just simply can't refuse. That's a big risk the Red Sox are taking there. I think it's also a similarly big risk for all these other bats. If they want to wait to see how much money they can allocate to some of these bats, eventually they're going to get swooped up by teams who don't want to wait anymore, and that could leave the Red Sox high and dry, especially when you consider the idea that I still think it's a long shot that the Red Sox are even considered in the Roki Sasaki sweepstakes. So it does scare me quite a bit, the idea that the Red Sox are sitting there and saying, you know what, we're going hard for Roki Sasaki. Let's wait a second. He'll probably sign January 16th, maybe 17th, but it'll probably be right when that international pool opens up to Major League Baseball. Let's see what happens there. I don't love that idea. I just think there's too much risk involved with that motion. I really hope the Red Sox are looking at Sasaki as more of a cherry on top of an offseason than they are as a heart and soul, the entire Sunday, if you will, of an offseason. But honestly, I don't know. So where are we overall with this Roki Sasaki stuff? Again, I still think it's a real long shot that they get him. I still think overwhelmingly the idea is amongst Major League Baseball, amongst executives, probably amongst Roki himself, that he is going to end up on the West Coast with one of those teams in California or Seattle or wherever that is on the West Coast of this country. But again, if he's available to all teams, there is going to be a ton of competition, but I do think there are ways the Red Sox can set themselves apart here. I think money-wise, they're smack dab in the middle of that international bonus pool money, so I do think they have a legitimate shot there as well. I don't know if I'm talking myself into this idea that the Red Sox have a shot at Roki, or if they actually do, so let me know in the comments down below. Outside of that, I get nervous. I get nervous with this Sasaki thing. I hope it's not what's holding up the Red Sox from making a big move. I just simply can't give you a concrete answer as to whether or not that's what the Red Sox are doing. It doesn't really sound like it, right? It still sounds like the Red Sox are playing around with some of these free agents, trying to get whoever they can, looking at trades, right? Sounds like they're still active behind the scene based on everything we've heard, but it is interesting timing that all of a sudden, league-wide, moves stop, and all of a sudden you start to get these Roki Sasaki rumors out there. It could be a league-wide thing as well. I honestly have no idea. So where do the Red Sox stand in all of this? I still think they're long shots, but I think they're long shots with a pretty good pitch. But that's just my opinion. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think about this? What do you think about Jonathan Mayo's report that the Red Sox are preparing a really serious pitch for Roki Sasaki? Do you think this is impacting how they're going about the offseason? And do you like that approach from this Red Sox team if you think that's the case? Let me know all your thoughts on the latest with Roki in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just simply helps out a ton. It's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Don't forget, if you want to listen instead of watch these episodes, all you got to do is head over to your favorite podcasting app and look up Red Seat Radio. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.